My husband didn't forget our anniversary. He didn't leave lipstick on his collar. He didn't even have the decency to hide behind something ordinary. He used my bonus to buy his mistress a condo. Not flowers, not hotel rooms, not some stupid weekend mistake he could cry through and blame on stress. A condo. Unit 1407, Lakeview. Marble counters, floor-to-ceiling windows, a balcony she later posed on with a champagne flute in one hand and my future in the other. I found out at 6:14 on a Monday morning, sitting at our kitchen island in Chicago with my coffee going cold beside me. 3 days earlier, my company had deposited my year-end bonus, $92,000 after taxes, the largest check I had ever earned in my life. I had already named the savings account in my head, Family Future Fund. That money was supposed to pay for our second round of IVF. Ethan knew that. He had sat across from me at this same kitchen island, both hands wrapped around mine, telling me we were still a family, still a team, still trying. He looked me in the eyes and said, "This is our second chance, Claire, I promise." 3 days later, the account balance was $4,008.22. At first, I thought it was fraud. Some stranger, some hacker, some mistake the bank would fix by lunch. Then I saw the wire transfer, $87,500. Lakeview Meridian Title Services, memo line, down payment assistance. Unit 1407. I called Ethan 7 times. He didn't answer. On the 8th, he sent one text. "Don't overreact. It's an investment." That was when I opened Instagram and saw her. Vanessa Cole, 31 years old, interior staging consultant, amateur lifestyle influencer, professional borrower of other women's lives. She was standing barefoot inside a condo I had never seen, holding a set of keys against her chest like she had been rescued. Her caption said, "He said I deserved a place where I could finally breathe." I didn't scream. I didn't throw my phone. I didn't drive across state lines to slap either of them, though for about 9 seconds I understood every woman who ever had. I zoomed in. Behind Vanessa on the kitchen counter was the bottle of champagne I had bought Ethan for our 10th anniversary. Beside it was a white gift box with his handwriting on the card. My bonus had bought the door. His lies had furnished the room. But here's what Ethan forgot about me. I don't just earn money. I read it. For 11 years, I had kept our bills paid, our credit clean, his failed business ideas alive, and his dignity intact. I was a senior compensation analyst for a national insurance company. I knew how to follow a number from deposit to disappearance. I knew how to read what people tried to hide inside paperwork. And by noon, I knew something Ethan didn't. The condo wasn't fully his. The mortgage note was private, and the lender was looking to sell. So I didn't call his mother. I didn't message Vanessa again. I didn't post screenshots or beg him to choose me. I called a real estate attorney and asked one question in the calmest voice of my life. What would it take to buy the mortgage on Unit 1407? For a long time, I thought the saddest thing in my marriage was that we couldn't have a child. I was wrong. The saddest thing was realizing I had spent 11 years building a life with a man who had been quietly studying where the money came from, not because he respected it, but because he planned to use it. Ethan and I met when I was 26, at a charity auction for a children's hospital in River North. I was there because my company had bought a table and needed warm bodies and dresses. He was there because he was trying to sell a condo to one of the surgeons. That was Ethan then. Charming, restless, full of big plans that always seemed just one signature away from becoming real. He made me laugh that night. I remember that clearly because I wasn't the kind of woman who laughed easily with strangers. I was careful. Numbers made sense to me. People were harder. Ethan was the opposite. He could walk into a room with nothing but a smile and leave with 3 business cards, 2 dinner invitations, and someone convinced they had known him for years. He told me he admired how steady I was. I told him I admired how brave he was. That was the first lie we told each other. He wasn't brave. He was reckless. And I wasn't steady. I was useful. By the time we married 2 years later, I was already the responsible one. I kept the calendar. I paid the bills. I tracked our retirement contributions, our insurance premiums, our property taxes, his quarterly estimated payments when he remembered to send me the numbers. Ethan called it teamwork. "You're just better at that stuff, Claire," he would say, kissing the side of my head while I sat with a laptop open at the dining table. "That's why we work." I used to hear love in that sentence. Later, I would hear the warning. His real estate career rose and fell like a fever. One month he was closing a deal and taking me to a steakhouse, talking about lake houses and investment portfolios. The next month he was staring at his phone in the dark, waiting for a client to call back, pretending not to notice when I transferred money from savings to cover the mortgage. I never shamed him for it. That is important to understand. I never once made him feel small for earning less. I never threw my W-2 in his face. I never asked him to be anything other than honest with me. What I did do was rescue him, quietly, repeatedly, almost professionally. I paid off a business credit card he swore was temporary. I covered the lease on the Lexus he said he needed for clients. I loaned him money for marketing photos, client gifts, a luxury networking club, a lead generation service, a website redesign, and one can't-miss property seminar in Scottsdale that missed so badly he came home sunburned and silent. Every time he said the same thing, just until the next closing. And every time I believed him, because believing him felt easier than admitting I was the only stable thing in our marriage. Then came the baby years. At first we said we were waiting until the timing was better. Then the timing got better, and nothing happened. I learned words I had never wanted in my mouth. Ovarian reserve, stimulation cycle, embryo grading, failed transfer. Ethan came to appointments when he could, which meant when they didn't interfere with showings. He held my hand in waiting rooms. He kissed my forehead when the nurse called with bad news. But grief made him slippery. Whenever I tried to talk about trying again, he found a reason to leave the room. "I just hate seeing you hurt," he said once. I believed that too. The first round of IVF cost us more than money. It cost me sleep, blood, dignity, and a small private hope I had carried since I was a girl. After it failed, I told myself we would try one more time when we had the funds rebuilt. That was why the bonus mattered. That $92,000 was not just a number. It was months of late nights. It was the promotion I had fought for while Ethan complained I worked too much. It was the year-end review where my boss said, "You saved the compensation audit, Claire. This is well earned." It was the first time in years I looked at a bank balance and saw possibility instead of obligation. The Friday the bonus landed, I came home with Thai takeout and a bottle of wine I didn't open because I was still pretending my body might need to be ready for something sacred. Ethan was already at the kitchen island, smiling too brightly. "I saw it hit," he said. I paused with the takeout bag in my hand. "You checked the account? It's our account." He came around the island and wrapped his arms around me. "I'm proud of you." I wanted those words so badly that I ignored the small cold feeling under them. We sat at the counter eating pad see ew from paper cartons, talking about doctors, timelines, maybe taking a weekend away before the next cycle. Ethan reached for my hand and squeezed it. "This is our second chance, Claire," he said. "I promise." I remember his thumb moving over my knuckles. I remember the warmth of his hand. I remember thinking that maybe all marriages had seasons where one person carried more than the other, and maybe love was not keeping score. 3 days later, the score found me. Monday morning, 6:14. The kitchen was still dark except for the under-cabinet lights. The dishwasher hummed. Ethan was supposedly at an early showing in Lincoln Park. I opened the banking app because I wanted to move the bonus into the savings account before the workday swallowed me. The balance made no sense, $4,308.22. For several seconds, my brain refused to read it as real. I refreshed the app. Then I refreshed it again, like the money might come back if I asked politely enough. It didn't. I clicked into the transaction history, and there it was. Wire transfer, $87,500. Lakeview Meridian Title Services. Down payment assistance. Unit 1407. The coffee beside me went cold while I stared at those words, not because I didn't understand them, because I did. The first thing I did was not call Ethan. That surprises people when I tell this story. They expect the wife to grab the phone with shaking hands and demand an explanation. They expect screaming, crying, the kind of scene people later describe as understandable, while quietly judging how much of yourself you let spill onto the floor. But I had spent my entire adult life reading payroll files, bonus ledgers, deferred compensation plans, and executive expense reports. Panic was not my first language. Documentation was. So before I called my husband, I took screenshots. I captured the balance, the transaction, the timestamp, the memo line. I downloaded the monthly statement even though the month had barely begun. Then I logged into the desktop version of our bank because mobile apps are made to comfort people, not inform them, and I wanted everything. Routing number, receiving institution, wire confirmation, beneficiary name, Lakeview Meridian Title Services. I said it out loud in the dark kitchen, testing the words like they belonged to someone else's life. Title services meant real estate. Down payment assistance meant purchase. Unit 1407 meant not a mistake, not a typo, not fraud by a stranger in another state. Somebody had bought something and Mummy had opened the door. I called Ethan once. No answer. Twice. No answer. By the fourth call, my hand was no longer trembling. By the seventh, I had already opened my laptop and searched Lakeview Meridian Title Services. It was a legitimate title company in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Their website had a clean blue logo and a smiling couple standing in front of a house they probably bought with money that actually belonged to them. The eighth time, Ethan didn't answer. He texted, "Don't overreact. It's an investment." I stared at the message until the screen dimmed. Not, "What are you talking about?" Not, "Are you okay?" Not, "I can explain." Don't overreact. That sentence told me he already knew exactly what I had found. I typed one word. Explain. The bubbles appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Then nothing. That was when I stopped waiting for a confession and started looking for records. Public property databases are not designed for betrayed wives at dawn, but they are designed for people who know how to be patient. By 7:03, I had the county recorder's site open. By 7:19, I had found the building. By 7:31, I was looking at Unit 1407, a two-bedroom condo in a renovated lakefront tower. $415,000. New appliances, shared rooftop deck, heated garage space. The listing photos showed sunlight pouring over pale floors, white cabinets, brushed brass fixtures, and a view of the water so clean it looked almost fake. The buyer was not Ethan Whitman. Not directly. The buyer was EW Holdings, LLC. I leaned back in my chair and let out a laugh so small and sharp it barely sounded human. EW Ethan Whitman. The LLC had been formed 12 days before closing. Registered agent, a legal services company downtown. Mailing address, a rented mailbox suite, clean enough to look professional, sloppy enough to look like Ethan, a man who always knew just enough to make a bad idea expensive. I searched the LLC again, then Ethan's name, then the building, then the listing agent. Then, finally, because some instinct in me had already moved ahead of the facts, I opened Instagram. Ethan followed 1,184 people. Most were clients, brokers, mortgage officers, interior designers, luxury developers, and women who looked like they had been assembled by an algorithm trained on soft lighting and expensive coffee. I found her in less than 10 minutes. Vanessa Cole, interior staging consultant, 31. 11,000 followers. Every photo looked like an advertisement for a life no one was actually living. Cream sweaters, rooftop cocktails, hotel mirrors, captions about healing, abundance, and knowing your worth. Her newest post had been uploaded the night before. She was standing barefoot in the middle of the condo from the listing photos. Unit 1407. My stomach did not drop. It hardened. She wore one of Ethan's white dress shirts. I knew it because the left cuff had a faint blue thread where I had repaired it 2 years earlier after he caught it on a drawer pull. Her hair was swept over one shoulder. In one hand she held keys, in the other a champagne flute. The caption said, "He said I deserved a place where I could finally breathe." I zoomed in on the counter behind her. The champagne was ours. Not technically, of course. A bottle is just a bottle. But I had bought it for our 10th anniversary from a little wine shop in Lincoln Square because Ethan said that year had been hard and we deserved something nice. We never opened it. I thought we were saving it for good news. Apparently, Ethan had found some. Beside the bottle was a white gift box. On top of it sat a card, angled just enough for me to see the first word. V, his handwriting. I sat there while the dishwasher finished its cycle and clicked off. The apartment went silent around me. Then the front door opened. Ethan came in wearing his navy coat, his hair still damp from a shower he had not taken in our home. He stopped when he saw me at the kitchen island with the laptop open. For 1 second, his face gave me the truth before his mouth tried to take it back. "Claire," he said carefully, "you're up early. I turned the laptop toward him. On the screen was Vanessa, barefoot in Unit 1407, holding keys bought with my future. "What did you buy?" I asked. He looked at the screen, then at me, then at the floor. "It's not what you think." That was the moment I knew he was going to insult me with every sentence that followed. "Then make it smarter than it looks," I said. He exhaled hard, like I was the exhausting one. "It's an investment property. With a woman living in it, she's staging it. In your shirt?" His jaw tightened. I clicked to the bank statement and turned the screen again. "With my bonus?" That did it. His eyes changed. The guilt disappeared and something colder stepped forward. "Our bonus," he said. I heard the word as if it had been spoken from the bottom of a well. Our. The money I had earned through 14-hour days, through audits he never asked about, through a year of injections and grief, and showing up to work with bruised veins under my sleeves because life did not pause for failed embryos. I looked at my husband, this man I had protected from consequences for 11 years, and understood that he did not think he had stolen from me. He thought he had finally taken what he was owed. "Does she know?" I asked. He blinked. "Know what?" "That the down payment came from me." The pause was small, but I had built a career on small discrepancies. "Yes," I said softly, "she knows." Ethan ran a hand through his hair. "Claire, don't make this ugly." I closed the laptop. "Ugly already happened," I said. "I'm just documenting it." I used to believe betrayal arrived as one clean break. It doesn't. It arrives in layers. First, the missing money. Then the other woman. Then the lie your husband thinks is good enough for you to swallow. Then, if you are very unlucky, the family members who look at the wreckage and ask what you did to make him crash. Ethan left the kitchen that morning without another word. He grabbed his keys, took his navy coat off the back of the chair, and walked out like a man escaping a fire he had started. I watched the door close behind him. Then I stood very still in the middle of the kitchen until my body understood what my mind already knew. My marriage was not wounded. It was evidence. I poured the cold coffee down the sink, rinsed the cup, and placed it in the dishwasher because some habits survive impact. Then I opened my laptop again and created a folder on my desktop, Unit 1407. Inside it, I made 6 subfolders: bank records, property records, LLC, Vanessa, Ethan texts, legal. It looked excessive. It was not. At 9:12, I sent Vanessa Cole one message through Instagram. "This is Claire Whitman. I believe you are living in a condo purchased with money taken from my account. We should talk." She read it in 4 minutes. She did not respond for 46. Ethan called first. That told me everything. "What the hell are you doing?" he snapped the second I answered. I was sitting at my desk in our guest room, the one we had once called the future nursery, because Hope is very good at humiliating people in advance. "I contacted the woman occupying a property my money helped purchase," I said. "You don't get to harass her." I sent one sentence. "You're trying to scare her." "No," I said. "I'm trying to inform her. There's a difference." He laughed, short and ugly. "This is exactly what I mean, Claire. You turn everything into a case file. You don't feel anything like a normal person." That almost worked, not because it was true, but because he knew where to press. Ethan had always treated my calm like a defect. If I cried, I was unstable. If I didn't, I was cold. There was no reaction available to me that he could not use as proof I deserved what he had done. So I gave him none. "You moved $87,500 out of our account without my consent," I said. "You used it to fund a condo for another woman. You formed an LLC to hide your name, and now you're worried about one Instagram message." Silence. Then lower. "You need to be careful." There it was. Not remorse, not fear of losing me, fear of being exposed. "I am being careful," I said. "That's why I'm writing everything down." I ended the call. 20 minutes later, Vanessa replied. "I don't know what Ethan told you, but I'm not the villain here." I stared at the message for a long time, not because it surprised me, but because I could hear Ethan inside it. I could hear the version of our marriage he had carried into that condo like a housewarming gift. Claire the cold wife. Claire the controlling accountant. Claire the woman who loved spreadsheets more than her husband. Claire the obstacle Ethan had bravely survived long enough to find softness elsewhere. I typed back, "Then you should want the truth." This time she called. Her face appeared on my screen in perfect lighting, the kind of soft gold glow that made grief look marketable. Behind her, I could see the edge of a cream sofa and the balcony door from the listing photos. Unit 1407 looked even more expensive in motion. "I didn't know about your bonus," she said immediately. Her voice was breathy, frightened, practiced, maybe all three. "What did he tell you?" I asked. "That you were separated emotionally." I almost smiled. "Emotionally." She looked down. "He said the marriage had been over for years, that you both agreed to live separate lives until the timing was right." The timing for what? For him to leave. There it was again. Ethan's gift, a version of events where he was always waiting for permission to do what he had already done. I shared my screen and opened the wire transfer. Vanessa's face changed when she saw the amount. "That came from my year-end bonus," I said. "It was supposed to pay for IVF." She covered her mouth, but her eyes flicked away from the screen toward the room around her. Not toward me, toward the condo. That was the moment I stopped wondering whether she was innocent. Maybe she hadn't known at first. Maybe Ethan had lied to her as easily as he had lied to me. But now the truth was sitting in front of her in black numbers on white paper, and she was calculating what it would cost her to care. "I'm sorry," she said, "but I gave up my lease. My things are here. Ethan said he would take care of me." I leaned back in my chair. "With my money." Her eyes filled, but no tears fell. "I can't just leave." I believed her. People almost never leave comfort the moment they learn who paid for it. After we hung up, I saved the call notes while they were fresh. Then I opened the county recorder site again and went deeper. The condo price was $415,000. The down payment was $87,500. The remaining debt was held through a private mortgage note by a small lender called North Pier Capital. That detail caught my attention. Most people think houses belong to whoever holds the keys. People like me know better. Homes belong in the end to whoever holds the paper. I searched North Pier Capital, small portfolio, private lending, bridge loans, short-term real estate financing, 3 complaints, 2 recent lawsuits, 1 article about liquidity problems after a failed development deal. By 3:40 that afternoon, I was on the phone with Martin Hale, a real estate attorney who had once helped my father fight a predatory refinancing clause after my mother died. Martin listened without interrupting. That was his gift. Some men wait for their turn to talk. Martin waited for the facts to finish assembling themselves. When I was done, he said, "Claire, do you want a divorce attorney, a therapist, or a strategy?" I looked at the photo of Vanessa standing on the balcony my bonus had bought access to. "Yes," I said. He sighed. "Start with the strategy. The rest will follow." I asked him the question that had been sitting cold and bright in my mind since noon. Can someone buy a mortgage note if they're not the borrower? Martin was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "If the note holder is willing to sell, yes, but understand what that means. You would not own the condo, you would own the debt." For the first time that day, my hands stopped shaking completely. "Debt is enough," I said. By the end of that day, I understood something that felt almost peaceful. Ethan had expected pain. He had prepared for tears, accusations, maybe a scene outside Unit 1407 with Vanessa crying on the balcony and him standing between us like some tragic man forced to choose between 2 women. What he had not prepared for was paperwork. Paperwork has no pulse. It does not get jealous. It does not drive too fast or post vague quotes on Instagram. Paperwork simply waits for someone patient enough to read it. That night, Ethan did not come home. At 8:22, he texted, "I need space." I looked around the apartment where I had paid the mortgage, replaced the dishwasher, refinanced the loan, chosen the sofa, stocked the medicine cabinet, and kept a drawer full of fertility clinic receipts Ethan never wanted to look at. Space. The word almost made me laugh. I wrote back, "Take all the space you can afford." He didn't answer. Good. I spent the next 6 hours doing what I should have done years earlier. First, I opened a new checking account in my name only and redirected my paycheck. Then I froze my credit with all 3 bureaus. I changed passwords to every financial account, cloud account, retirement portal, insurance login, and shared subscription Ethan had ever known about. I downloaded 11 years of bank statements, credit card records, tax returns, wire confirmations, fertility invoices, and every message where Ethan had referred to my bonus as our second chance. At 1:17 in the morning, I found one more thing, An email from Ethan to himself, forwarded from our joint account 2 weeks earlier. Subject line: closing docs. He must have forgotten our bank automatically copied joint account users on wire-related correspondence. I opened it. There it was, the settlement statement, the LLC authorization, the occupancy representation, the personal guarantee, and the source of funds certification. Ethan had signed a document stating that the down payment funds belonged to EW Holdings LLC and were not borrowed, gifted, disputed, misappropriated, or subject to any third-party claim. I read that sentence 3 times. Then I printed it. Because the thing about lying is that people think the danger is getting caught emotionally. They forget the real danger is signing the lie. The next morning, I met Martin Hale in his office above a bakery in Oak Park. He was 68, tall and narrow, with silver hair combed straight back and glasses that made him look more disappointed than curious. He had been a real estate attorney for 40 years, and he carried himself like a man who had seen enough people ruin themselves through arrogance to stop being surprised by it. He spread Ethan's documents across the conference table. "Your husband," Martin said slowly, "is not as clever as he thinks he is." "I know." "No," he said, tapping the source of funds certification. "You emotionally know. I mean contractually." He walked me through it line by line. The private mortgage note had been issued by North Pier Capital because Ethan could not qualify cleanly for a traditional bank loan through the LLC. He had signed a personal guarantee, which meant he was personally responsible if the LLC defaulted. He had also certified that the down payment was clean and undisputed. "It wasn't," I said. "No," Martin replied. "It was marital money moved without consent, tied to a likely dissipation claim in divorce, used for the benefit of an affair partner and misrepresented in the closing file." He leaned back. "That is not a morality problem anymore. That is a paper problem." I felt something inside me settle into place. "What happens if the note holder finds out?" I asked. "They can issue a notice. Depending on the exact terms, they may call the loan due, demand cure, accelerate the debt, or pursue remedies if the borrower cannot correct the issue." "And if I own the note?" Martin looked at me over his glasses. "Then you become the person allowed to send the notice." There was no lightning strike, no swelling music, just a lawyer, a table, and the cleanest sentence I had heard in 3 days. North Pier Capital did not want to sell at first. Lenders rarely admit they need liquidity until the number is good enough to make honesty convenient. Martin handled the calls. He did not mention me. He used a small entity he already had available for note acquisitions and told them his client was interested in distressed private real estate paper. Their first price was insulting. Martin told them so. Their second price was still too high. I told Martin to wait. Waiting is a financial skill people mistake for passivity. Ethan hated waiting because waiting made him feel powerless. I had built my entire career on knowing when not to move. 3 days later, North Pier called back. By then, Ethan had come home twice, once to grab clothes, once to lecture me. "You're making this bigger than it needs to be," he said, standing in our bedroom doorway while I folded laundry with the calm of a woman sorting evidence. "You moved almost $90,000 into another woman's house." "It wasn't a house, it was an investment." "Then why is she sleeping there?" His mouth tightened. "You don't understand real estate." That was almost funny. I looked at him and said, "I understand leverage." He didn't like that word. Men like Ethan love leverage when they believe they're holding it. They call it business. They call it strategy. But when a woman picks it up and reads the fine print, suddenly it becomes cruelty. The following Tuesday, Martin called at 4:06 p.m. They accepted. I was sitting in my office at work, reviewing executive bonus variance reports as if my own life had not become one. "How much?" he told me. It was less than the face value of the debt and more than I wanted to spend, which meant it was probably fair. I used money from an investment account I had opened before marriage, money Ethan had always called my paranoid fund. Martin structured the purchase through a new LLC named Hearthline Recovery. When he asked if I wanted a different name, I said no. A hearth is where a home is supposed to be warm. Recovery is what happens after someone tries to burn it down. At 5:48 p.m., the assignment documents arrived in my inbox. Hearthline Recovery LLC was now the holder of the mortgage note secured by Unit 407. I did not smile. Not really. I just sat very still and let myself breathe. Then Martin sent the first formal notice to EW Holdings LLC. Demand for documentation, source of funds verification, occupancy clarification, and cure of potential misrepresentation under the mortgage note. 2 days later, Ethan stormed into the apartment without knocking, waving the letter in his hand. His face had gone a color I had never seen on him before. Not anger, not grief, recognition. "What the hell is Hearthline Recovery?" he demanded. I was standing at the sink rinsing a coffee mug. I turned off the water. Then I looked at my husband, the man who thought he had bought another woman a home with my money, and gave him the answer he had earned. "Your lender." Denise Whitman called it a family dinner. That was how I knew it was an ambush. No one in Ethan's family gathered over roast chicken and mashed potatoes unless there was a performance scheduled. Denise liked witnesses. She believed a room full of relatives could turn pressure into morality if she arranged the chairs correctly. Her text came Thursday morning. "Claire, sweetheart, I think we all need to sit down like adults. Sunday at 6, Ethan will be there. We can clear the air before this gets uglier." I stared at the word adults. People who steal your future always want maturity from you afterward. I did not answer right away. First, I forwarded the message to Martin. Then I called my divorce attorney, a woman named Rachel Kim, who had the calm voice of someone who had watched hundreds of men underestimate quiet wives and had never grown tired of seeing the invoices arrive. "Do you want to go?" Rachel asked. "No," I said. "Then why are you considering it?" "Because Ethan thinks the dinner is where I lose." There was a pause. Then Rachel said, "Bring copies." Not originals. So I did. By Sunday evening I had a folder with 7 tabs. Bank statement, wire transfer settlement statement, LLC documents, Vanessa's public posts, source of fund certification, and mortgage note assignment. Martin had agreed to come, not as my attorney of record, but as the note holder's counsel. Rachel told me to say very little. "Let them talk," she said. "People like Ethan always help when they think they're winning." Ethan texted twice before dinner. "Please don't make a scene." Then, "My mother is just trying to help." I wrote back, "I'm bringing paper, not drama." He did not respond. Denise's house was in Winnetka, all white trim and polished floors and framed family photos where Ethan always stood in the center, smiling like a man beloved by the architecture. When I arrived, Martin was already parked 2 houses down. He stepped out of his car holding a slim leather folder. "You ready?" he asked. "No." "Good," he said. "That means you understand the room." Inside, Denise had set the table like Thanksgiving. Crystal glasses, cloth napkins, candles no one needed. Ethan stood near the fireplace in a gray sweater I had bought him, looking wounded in a way he had clearly practiced. His brother Andrew was there with his wife, 2 cousins, an uncle, enough people to make silence useful. And Vanessa. She sat beside Ethan on the sofa, wearing cream trousers and small gold earrings, her hands folded in her lap like she had been invited to a mediation instead of the scene of her own receipt. For a moment, I felt it. Not rage, not jealousy, a clean physical humiliation. My husband had not just brought his mistress into his mother's home. He had brought her as evidence that he expected me to behave. Denise crossed the room with both hands extended. "Claire," she said softly, loudly enough for everyone to hear, "thank you for coming with an open heart." "I brought documents," I said. Her smile flickered. Ethan stepped forward. "Claire." I looked at him. "Ethan." He lowered his voice. "You promised you wouldn't make this ugly." "No," I said. "You asked me not to. Those are different things." Dinner never really began. Denise tried. She poured wine. She talked about healing, that she said marriage was complicated, that good people made mistakes, that money could be replaced but family could not. She said all of this while Vanessa stared at her untouched plate and Ethan watched me like a man waiting for a bomb to choose a side. Finally, Denise placed her napkin beside her plate and sighed. "I think we should speak plainly," she said. That was generous of her. She had no idea how plainly I had come prepared to speak. She turned to me. "Claire, I know you're hurt. Any woman would be. But Ethan has felt trapped for years, controlled, judged. A man cannot breathe when every dollar becomes a weapon." I looked at Vanessa. "Is that what he told you? That he couldn't breathe?" Vanessa swallowed. "I don't want to be part of a fight." "You live in the fight." Ethan slammed his hand lightly on the table. "Not hard enough to look violent. just hard enough to remind me he was tired of being embarrassed. "This is exactly the problem," he said. "You turn everything into an audit. Vanessa makes me feel like a person. You make me feel like a balance sheet." I opened my folder. "No," I said, "you made yourself one." I placed the first document in the center of the table. "This is my year-end bonus deposit, $92,000 after taxes." The room went quiet in that greedy way rooms do when money appears. I placed the second page beside it. "This is the wire transfer Ethan initiated 3 days later, $87,500 to Lakeview Meridian Title Services." Denise's face tightened. "Claire, private financial matters became family matters when you invited an audience." I placed the settlement statement down. "This is the closing record for Unit 1407. Purchase price $415,000. Buyer EW Holdings LLC." Andrew leaned forward. "Ethan, is that your company?" Ethan said nothing. I placed the LLC filing down. "Yes," I answered for him. Vanessa's face had gone pale. Then I placed the printed Instagram post on the table. Vanessa barefoot, keys in hand, caption visible beneath her smile. He said I deserved a place where I could finally breathe. No one spoke. I looked at her, not cruelly. Cruelty would have required more interest than I had left. "That place was funded with my IVF money." Vanessa's eyes filled. "Ethan told me you were separated." "We weren't. I didn't know at first." "I believe you." Her face moved with relief. Then I added, "But after you knew, you stayed." That relief died quickly. Ethan stood. "Enough." Martin finally opened his folder. Not quite. Every head turned toward him. Denise blinked as if she had only just noticed he was there. Martin laid one document on top of all the others. "This is the assignment of mortgage note," he said. "North Pier Capital transferred its interest in the Unit 1407 note to Hearthline Recovery LLC." Ethan's chair scraped backward. "You had no right." Martin looked at him over his glasses. "North Pier had every right to sell a note it held. My client had every right to buy it." Vanessa's voice came out small. "What does that mean?" I answered her. "It means Ethan didn't buy you a condo. He used my bonus to open the door, borrowed the rest, lied in the closing documents, and personally guaranteed the debt." I placed the source of funds certification last. "This is the document he signed, saying the down payment was clean, undisputed, and not subject to any third-party claim." I looked at Ethan. "It was disputed the second you stole it." Denise stood, shaking now. "You are destroying him." "No," I said. "I am collecting what he signed." Ethan reached for the papers. Martin's hand landed on the folder first. "I wouldn't," he said mildly, "not in front of witnesses." That stopped him. For the first time since I had known him, Ethan looked around a room and found no easy face to borrow. His mother was panicking. Vanessa was staring at him as if she had finally understood the difference between being chosen and being financed. His brother looked disgusted. His cousins looked at the table, and I felt nothing dramatic. No triumph. No grief sharp enough to cut. Just balance. I removed my wedding ring and placed it beside the wire transfer. "You wanted my bonus in the room," I said. "Now it is." Then I stood, gathered my copies, and left the originals where they belonged, in the record. The thing about public humiliation is that people expect it to end with shouting. Ours ended with silence. No one followed me out of Denise's dining room at first. Not Ethan. Not Vanessa. Not even Denise, who had built an entire life around chasing the last word. I walked down the front steps with Martin beside me, the winter air cutting clean through my coat, and for the first time in weeks I could breathe without feeling like I was borrowing the room from someone else. At the curb, Martin stopped. "You did well," he said. "I don't feel well." "That's not the same thing." I looked back at the glowing windows of Denise's house. Through the glass, I could see Ethan standing at the table, one hand on the back of a chair, his mother talking fast beside him. Vanessa was still seated, both hands pressed over her mouth. "She'll leave him," I said. Martin followed my gaze. "Maybe." "No," I said. "She will. Ethan sold her a rescue story. Tonight she found out she was living inside a loan file." Martin gave the smallest smile. "That does tend to ruin the romance." My phone started ringing before I reached the car. Ethan. I let it go. Then again. Then again. By the time I got home, there were 17 missed calls, 6 texts, and 1 voice memo I did not play until the next morning because I already knew the order of his emotions. Anger first, then accusation, then panic, then apology when the other 3 failed. His texts arrived exactly that way. You had no right to do that in front of my family. Then you embarrassed Vanessa for no reason. Then, what happens if I can't cure the note? And finally at 1:08 a.m., Claire, please. I made a mistake. I stared at that last one for a long time. A mistake. A mistake is forgetting to pick up dry cleaning. A mistake is buying whole milk when your wife drinks oat milk. A mistake is taking the wrong exit because you were tired. But what Ethan had done was not a mistake. It had a wire transfer, an LLC, a closing date, a gift box, a personal guarantee, and another woman's name written on a card. That is not a mistake. That is a project. The next morning I sent one message. All future communication goes through counsel. Then I blocked him. Rachel filed for divorce that week. In the petition, she used a phrase I had never heard before all this began: dissipation of marital assets. It sounded almost too clean for what it meant. It meant Ethan had used money from our marriage for a purpose that served only himself and his affair. It meant the court could consider what he had taken. It meant my pain did not have to arrive in tears to be entered into the record. The condo did not disappear overnight. Legal things rarely move at the speed betrayed people deserve. Hearthline Recovery issued the required notices. Ethan failed to provide clean source of funds documentation. He failed to cure the default. He failed, most painfully for him, to talk his way out of a document he had signed with his own hand. Vanessa left Unit 1407 2 weeks after the dinner. I know because she sent me one final message. I didn't know at first. I believed her. That was the complicated part. Maybe Ethan had lied to her in the beginning. Maybe he had told her I was cold, distant, impossible to love. Maybe she had believed she was stepping into a new life, not standing on the floorboards of another woman's stolen future. So I wrote back the only thing I had left to say. I know. But after you knew, you stayed. She never answered. Ethan tried everything before the end. He cried in Rachel's office during mediation. He said he had felt invisible. He said Vanessa made him feel admired. He said I had become too focused on money, as if money had walked itself out of our account and into a condo with a lake view. At one point, he looked at me across the conference table and said, I just wanted something that felt like mine. I looked at the man I had carried through 11 years of failed closings, late payments, and borrowed confidence. You had a wife, I said. You wanted an investor. After that, he stopped trying to make me understand. Eventually, Unit 407 was sold. Not dramatically. Not with police tape or screaming on the sidewalk. Just signatures, deadlines, payoff numbers, and one final wire that returned most of what Ethan had taken. Not all of it. Betrayal always keeps a fee, but enough. Enough to close the account Ethan had opened inside me without permission. Enough to pay my attorney. Enough to restart the part of my life he thought he had spent. I did not do the second round of IVF right away. For a while, I could not bear the thought of turning hope into another scheduled procedure, another calendar full of injections and blood work and waiting rooms. Instead, I moved into a smaller apartment with morning light, old wood floors, and no memories of Ethan's keys on the counter. On my first night there, I unpacked 3 things and placed them on my desk. The bank statement showing my bonus deposit, the assignment of mortgage note, my wedding ring sealed in a plain white envelope. I did not keep them because I wanted to suffer. I kept them because women like me are very good at forgetting what we survived once the room gets quiet again. Ethan thought he had used my bonus to buy another woman a home. What he really bought was the first document that proved I was done paying for a marriage I was the only one living in. And if there is one thing I learned from Unit 407, it is this. Never confuse being trusted with being used. Never confuse being calm with being weak. And never let a man call your money ours when he has already decided your pain belongs only to you.